My name is Dr. A from the East African Wellness and Resource Center. Today we're going to talk about how mental illness is real in our church community. This is the most important topic that we all have to be understand about the reality of mental illness in our community, especially in the church life. So as I said earlier, mental illness is real. So we need to be open up and talk more about how this mental health issue is affecting many population, especially many vulnerable populations, young adults, youths, elders, leaders, community leaders, being affected, and many other peoples as well being affected by mental health issues. It would be surprise you to know that men and women of faith, the ones we read about in Bible stories, sometimes struggled with mental health too. That is very fascinating. In the Bible, in our Bible, there's so many peoples, so many prophets, so many other, church figures have been dealing with mental health issues. Our language around mental health and diagnosis might be modern, what we have right now, but the struggle itself is timeless. In fact, the Bible is filled with people who knew and loved God and still wrestled with things like anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, anger, and so many other mental health issues, family crisis as well. And each of these people in the Bible is a good reminder for all of us, especially those of us who struggle with our mental health issues, that we are not alone, or we don't need to be ashamed about it, or it's not a sign of our weakness. But beyond that, we can also learn a valuable lesson from those who have gone before us in how they dealt with and responded to their emotional struggles or mental health. My friends, let's take a look. Some of the stories from our Bible. Those who have been dealing with emotional struggles, mental health issues. Those stories might help us to get more confident, to see ourselves as a human being. Our emotional well-being, mental health is real. Yes, many biblical figures has been experienced profound emotional and psychological distresses that align with the modern understandings of mental health struggles. What I mentioned earlier, like anxiety, depression, trauma, suicidal thoughts, trauma, so many ways. So while the Bible does not use modern terms like mental illness, it describes people, grappling with deep sorrow and mental turmoil. Let's take a few examples of men of God, men and women of God who are dealing with some emotional struggles and mental health issues in our biblical stories. The first one is King David, who had been very vulnerable about his emotional struggle or mental health struggles in his psalm, in the book of Psalms. He was explaining clearly. King David, often called a man after God's own heart. King David openly expresses his deep distresses, his anxiety, his depression. In many psalms, he writes of his soul being downcast and disturbed on Psalm 42:5, and of his bed being drenched with tears on Psalm 6:6. His struggles often stemmed from guilt over his sins, such as after he has an affair with Bethsaida and being persuaded by enemies like King Saul. He was very real. He shared his fallibility, his struggles, emotional struggles and crises. And the other prophet is Elijah. After a major spiritual triumph, the prophet Elijah faced a death threat from Queen Jezebel and fled into the wilderness. Exhausted and terrified, this man of God, in his despair, he sat under a bush and prayed for God to take his life, saying, "I have had enough, Lord. Take me." 1 Kings 19:4. This is kind of suicidal, or would like to die. In response, God provided him with food, rest, and patient care rather than condemnation. He did not condemn him. This man of God, he didn't assign him or, judge him that you're weak. God never judged him. The other man of God is Job. Job, after losing his family, wealth, health in a series of traumatic events, Job experienced a profound grief and despair. He questioned why he was born, why God seemed absent, experiencing a sense of hopelessness. His story that we all know highlights the human experience of suffering and seeking God in the midst of all his struggles, all his crises, all his unimaginable pain. He was seeking God. What a profound lesson. What a great true human stories. And King Saul, God's spirit departed from him, from King Saul, due to his disobedience. And an evil spirit tormented him. He became paranoid, intensely jealous of David, exhibiting a sign that some scholars interpret as a symptoms of a mental disorder, possibly similar to the current diagnosis we have, a bipolar disorder or severe depression as well. That's what the Bible talks about. That's the story we found in our Bible. Jonah, the other man of God, when the people of Nineveh repented and God spared them, Jonah became angry and wished to die, frustrated that God was compassionate to his enemies. And then the other woman, the woman of God, Hannah, who was unable to have children for a long time, was deeply distressed and wept bitterly to the point that a priest thought she was drunk. And 1 Samuel 1:10-13, 1 Samuel 1:10-13, you can get the story. Her story portrays the deep anguish and sorrow of infertility and grief. We can name it. So many, men of God, men and women of God in the Bible who are dealing with so many kinds of emotional crisis and mental health issue as well. Our Lord Jesus Christ, he's a full man and a full God. He had a flesh like us. He came with he got the flesh like us. He came with the flesh like us. In the Garden of Gethsemane, before his crucifixion, Jesus experienced overwhelming sorrow and anxiety, telling his disciples, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death," on Matthew 26:38. And Luke's Gospel describes his sweat as like a drops of blood falling into the ground, a physical manifestation of extreme distress. Because he's full human being. He has a human being. He has our nature. He came with our nature, even if he's a full God and full human being. He never denied about his feelings, his emotions. Let's not hide our emotions. Let's not our distress. Let's not our struggles. This narrative, my friends, demonstrates that emotional and physiological struggles are part of human condition, and that people in the Bible were not immune to them. The biblical accounts often emphasize seeking God is the most important. Prayer is the most important. Using our faith is the most important. It's also finding support from others, from the church people or others, from the professionals. It's very important. And the compassion of God in the midst of our suffering is very important. Let's not struggle by ourselves. Let's not be isolated. Our church community, let's talk about this issue in our church pulpits. In our Bible study, let's talk about mental health. It's real. My friends who are struggling on a mental health issue, emotional crisis right now, you are not alone in your struggles. We hope that by taking a look at some of these biblical characters who struggled with their mental health and emotional crisis, we can all be encouraged to know that we are not alone. We are not alone. Countless of men and women of faith who have gone before us have wrestled with same things we have today. We are dealing today. Don't be ashamed about that. Don't be frightened about that. It's not a sign of your weakness. Let's ask God to show us what He wants us to learn from each of them. And these people in the Bible did choose to keep trusting God and coming to Him in the midst of their struggles and seeking support, seeking help. It's a very important thing. Don't struggle by yourself. Don't fight this fight by your own. Come out, talk about it, seek professional support. Look for the support that someone that can understanding you. As I said, it's not a sign of your weakness. It's not a sign that you be cursed. You are not cursed for you have a mental health issues. That's how we see in our community. That's what the stigma we have in our community. It's not the sign of evil spirit influences. Why not? When we talk about the diabetic, when we talk about other physical health, we are not thinking about the evil spirit influence. We only think about when someone is dealing with mental health. That's we think about that kind of evil spirit influence. That is totally a misconception. It's an illness like other illness. So, my community friends, seek help. Be open. Don't be ashamed about it. Don't be ashamed about it. It's very important. We're losing so many users and young adults. We're losing so many people due to our stigmas and the stereotype thoughts and ideas we have around us that is kind of hurting our community. Yes, we might say that how it happened and why. That's a good question. It could be from genetic developmental or developmental issues, from environmental issues, or from life factors, or it could be a brain chemical imbalancement. Either or, it's kind of an illness that we need to deal with it and seek a support. It's time to openly discuss this issue in our community. It's time to bring the community leaders and community members to come together and discuss about how we can support our community members who have been struggling on the mental health issues before the time is past. Thank you very much for listening. This is Dr. Abe from East African Wellness and Resource Center. If you have any questions or concerns or comments, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you very much for listening. Make sure, stay healthy, stay safe, keep your mental health your priority. Care. Have a good day.